Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to preview the Joe Willock Derby. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast, pre-match preview live stream show featuring Jessica Black and Elliot Smith, brought to you by the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast crew on YouTube and Twitch and Twitter and Facebook.com. That's the title of the show. And I, for one, think it is a totally appropriate, acceptable title. Look, the important thing with titles is that they should be easy to remember and catchy, but they should also contain information. I think we've done a nice job of that. I should get off the screen and get the person on the screen who you're really here to see, and that is Jessica Black. You can find her on Twitter at It's Jessinho. Hello, Jess.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Hey, we got the new podcast theme in there. We got you in here. Everything's going smooth. We're basically on time. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm excited to play Newcastle, but I'm more excited to hear about your Thanksgiving, Jessica. So happy belated Thanksgiving. And anybody watching from the U.S. or anywhere where they had lots of food on Thursday, which, let's face it, it's Thursday. You should always have lots of food. How was your Thanksgiving, and what did you eat, if you don't mind my prying questions?
Oh, man, I ate a lot. It was great because obviously last year we didn't do Thanksgiving because of the pandemic. So it was nice to see family that I haven't seen in like over a year. Was able to see my cousin's daughter for the first time. So family time was really good. I had yams, potato salad, dressing, macaroni and cheese, salmon, because I don't eat turkey or ham or any meat like that. So it was great. I put up the picture on Twitter and I didn't get a bunch of, oh my gosh, what is that? So I think we did a good job. And so, yeah, I can't complain about my Thanksgiving. How was yours?
Yeah, I mean, it was great just because I got to spend it with family, and that's what's more important. No, I'm kidding. It was great because I ate good food. Let's the family. I drank a lot. I ate a lot. We had all kinds of booze, and you know the funny thing is I don't like turkey, Jess. So like, I try to drown myself in the other stuff. You know what I mean? So it's the sweet potato casserole stuff, and the stuffing, and the rolls, and I'm not a cranberry guy either, although, you know, if you have a UTI, that can be handy. But like there, you know, there's lots of food to be eaten that isn't just the turkey. I smothered the turkey in gravy. I eat it. It's weird because I feel like the turkey the day after, when you turn it into a sandwich and throw some cheese on it, toast some bread, you know, get some gravy on there and make it into like a sandwich shop type thing. I almost like it more, but I think next year I'm going to go for like a foods of the world kind of Thanksgiving, throw some Sicilian meatballs in there, maybe make some homemade pizzas and, you know, really, really spice it up. So do you feel committed to the traditional food concept or not so much?
I'm so committed to the point where this morning I didn't eat eggs and all of that. I ate Thanksgiving dinner again. And when we get off of this, I'm going to do it again. I'm very, very committed
Nice.
to it because it only comes around once a year. I never cook that stuff otherwise. And yeah, but I want to congratulate you for something because I feel like you've done such a good job today at the waffle. So good today. I mean,
you already were listening to the podcast, or you mean just on the live stream? Just this.
You've done so good today with your waffle. I mean, I was like, I wonder if we're just going to jump straight into Newcastle, but you've done such a good job today. So good job, Elliot. Nice.
Yeah, I want to say that I am learning. I am trying to get to the Arsblog level. I will never be there when it comes to waffle, but we've done it. Let's move on. Yes, football. Yeah, let's talk football, Nicholas. That's why you're here. And those of you who are here, thank you. Aren't you too young to drink? It's early in the pod, but I already get to break out. I am 37. It was said once, was guessed by someone once, and it will forever be true. So let's get to your questions and comments, and let's start with the most important thing of all, which is just getting to a bit of the news and lineup predictions and things like that. So, Jess, injury-wise, there's not much to report. I think a lot of people expect that Tierney will come back in for Tavares. Clive and I did a rewatch of the first half of the Liverpool game. And I know nobody's in the mood to hear how a 4-0 loss was good, but the first half was good, and there were things to like. And Tavares could have been a man of the match from that half. He makes an error, not related to his defending, maybe an awareness thing, a maturity thing. A lot of people think now it's time for Tierney to come back. I think it'd be harsh on Tavares to lose his place under those conditions, but, you know, Arteta can manage that behind the scenes. Of all the possible changes, is that the one you think that is most likely to happen?
Yes, for sure. I
like the thoughtful pause. It shows that you're not leaping to a conclusion. You're really processing it.
I had to think about it for a second. I do think it's the most likely one to happen, but I believe there'll be other changes. But I did a poll on Twitter just before we came on to see what other people thought what was most important, getting Tierney minutes or Nuno's confidence. And overwhelming response to Kieran Tierney's minutes. I think at this point, not because Tavares played bad, he was excellent defensively against Mo Salah. He had no joy, until we just completely crumbled. So it wasn't a defensive thing, like you said. It was errors in possession. We can forgive him for that. But I think we almost overthink it a little bit because we're not behind the scenes and we don't hear the conversations that Arteta's having with Nuno. So I don't think he will feel if Tierney comes back in that his Arsenal career is like, everybody's thinking about him as like this guy that can't play. Like, I don't think it's going to be that levels. Nuno will definitely get playing time, but I tend to agree that it's time to bring Tierney back into the team. Now, one thing that we've learned in these last couple of days is that Nuno is a lot closer to the first team than we probably thought, which is a good thing.
He's already far surpassed expectation, right? In terms of any kind of playing time he would have had and the level he would have hit, I think.
Exactly. A lot of people were kind of like, and me, just raw talent. We'll see what happens. So this is a good thing that he's gotten some good minutes against different levels of opposition. But Tierney needs minutes. We're going to need him. And I still view him as our number one left back. So I would like to see him come in against Newcastle, but that's no shade on Nuno, because I actually thought he was really good against Liverpool besides those mistakes that he made.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I guess the thing for me with Tierney is there's nothing harsh for Nuno about Tierney coming back in. It's more just how the circumstance by which he loses the place, right? You have a really high visibility error in a big game and then lose your place. But I think there is an issue here that relates to the upcoming games. So after this, we go to Old Trafford and then we go to Everton. Mm-hmm. Now, on their current form, neither of those games look impossible, but I don't think either of those games are places you want to be going into the lab and experimenting, right? So Newcastle at home, their defense is crap. Their attack maybe is better than the metrics might look because, they might have been held back from a coaching standpoint. They do have some talent in attack, but defensively they're suspect, and it should be a chance for us to get some joy in attack, which we desperately need to get going. But I think it's also a chance, Jess, if he wants to bring anybody back in, whether it's Tierney, whether it's Odegaard, maybe, if he wants to give Pepe some minutes, I don't think you want to be bringing people back who have not been playing at Old Trafford on Monday, right? So do you think that there's a priority for him to bring anyone in who he'd like to get a look at in this game, given that the next two in particular, and then that busy holiday, fixture program, whatever it's called, starts? This feels like the time, if anyone's going to come back in to the starting lineup, where he's got an opportunity to try that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, when you look at the players that we're maybe talking about in terms of maybe you want to bring out for a second, you're talking about Emile Smith-Rowe, maybe Bukayo, maybe Aubameyang. And then you're looking at players like Martinelli, Pepe, and Odegaard. And in particular, I personally want to see Odegaard come in. I think we need to know what Odegaard can give us. And the best way to see that is against lower level opposition. And then hopefully he can step up from there. I think a lot of things went through him last season during his loan, and things are a little bit different now. Things are kind of going through Emile Smith-Rowe. So he's kind of on the outskirts. But let's be real. We always know that the Lacazette Aubameyang patch Band-Aid is always going to run out at some point. So Odegaard coming in against Newcastle should be a good game for him to touch and feel the ball, get a third midfielder in there to overload their midfield space. I mean, we keep playing with two. We need to play with three. And then you can look at, maybe Aubameyang coming out for Martinelli. I think that would be a good substitution. Aubameyang's not going to gain any I don't think he's like out of form and he needs confidence and all of that. I don't think he's going to get that against Newcastle and then be like scintillating against Manchester United. But I do think maybe you could take him out and just plop Martinelli into that role and play Odegaard in behind and do something there, or take out Emile Smith-Rowe. But those are the two players I want to see come in. Not sure about Pepe. For me, I'm a little bit about Pepe, but Martinelli.
I think Arteta is too, to be fair.
I mean, yeah. Do you agree, or do you think something a little bit different?
So what I popped up is what I expect. I don't know if it's what I would do, but I think there's a chance now that Odegaard comes back in. Now, I don't know that that means that Odegaard goes ahead and starts at Old Trafford, but, Lacazette looks like he's dead on 60 minutes. I think that he is someone who definitely needs to be fresh to be worth using, especially in that role where we're asking him to cover so much ground, drop in, stick his back into a defender, hold the ball under pressure, give it to keep our attack moving up the pitch, then race back into the box to try to be there for the attacks. So I think this is what we'll see. I think the only changes will be Tierney and Odegaard. Look, Odegaard's got to play. We bought this guy to be that position, not for Lacazette, who's leaving in the summer, to be that position. And if you can't use him home to Newcastle, that's not ideal. I realize we're coming off a loss and results are what matter more than making people feel good. But this lineup looks like one that I think can get the job done. The interesting question for me is whether Saka or Smith Rowe, either of those guys, gets a rest too. Smith Rowe, Clive talked about this on the pod. He's been playing a lot of football. And he went off to England. He had this big moment, and then he's got to come back into Anfield. And maybe it's just time for him to take stock, and you get Pepe in on the left, where we've seen him sometimes be a little more engaged and effective, or a Martinelli. I mean, the funny thing is, if you go to the Arsenal website, and I wonder if I can actually pop this up, the main picture under here we go. This is the headline picture. I'll remove this and add this in as I tell everybody the behind the scenes excitement that is happening. This is the thing that you would see on Arsenal's website right now.
I love reading into things.
Picture. I love reading it. Look, let's read into things, right? So I think Martinelli is a guy who we all have high hopes for, and you start to say, where are the minutes for Martinelli? Just like they're not going to come. He's not going to get starts in big games if he's not in the 11. There is very, very little left. I mean, the cup competitions now, you've got an FA Cup third round tie, which he will probably play in, I would assume. And maybe in the next leg of the League Cup, and that's it. Home to Newcastle feels like a place for me, if you wanted to give Smith Rowe a little bit of a rest, that you give Martinelli the first hour and see what he's got. So what do you think about reading too much into this picture and the possibility of Martinelli coming back in?
I don't see why we wouldn't do it. I mean, I know that, okay, so Newcastle, yes, they're kind of like in a little bit of a transition, but they're not a great team. And I don't care how much continuity and all of that. Like, I know that those things matter, but I easily think that like you could bring in a Martinelli and a Pepe and Odegaard and still get a good attack going against a really bad defense. There was a game last season that we played, I think, against Sheffield, and they were really poor, obviously, last season, but we played, it was towards the back end of the season, Martinelli off of the left, Lacazette, Saka, and Pepe. You could easily plop Odegaard into that 10 position and play that same front three, and you get minutes for players that haven't really been playing and rest the players that you know are going to play against Manchester United at Old Trafford. I don't think that should break apart our attack to the point where it just is so disjointed. I don't see it that way, but I could easily see something like that. I mean, I personally feel like that is what I'd want to see. Now, will Arteta make that many changes? I believe at least one of Emile Smith-Rowe or Saka will play. They always do. But at the same time, it's like, when are they going to get a rest? If not against Newcastle, it's not going to come in the next 2 weeks either after that. So, yeah, but it's Newcastle at home. If it's going badly, bring them off of the bench, but it shouldn't go badly.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about the Newcastle side of things. New manager bump. This is new manager bump week because we've got Eddie Howe followed by, I guess, Michael Carrick. Carrick's at the wheel. Howe's at the wheel. He's only had a short period of time to work with the team. In their Brentford game, we saw a really just wide open, chaotic kind of game, 3-3 final there. Newcastle have the talent to be more effective in attack. I don't think they're going to be any more effective defensively. And I feel like that's the perfect thing, the perfect tonic for Arsenal right now. Just for me, the next big step under Arteta is still to find a solution to how we can be more effective attacking. And here comes an opponent coming to the Emirates that looks like they want to play more open football and already can't defend. So do you think that we're catching the right team at the right time is the key here to really get the attack kicked into gear.
Yeah, I've seen the graphics going around about the XG, and then everybody's kind of freaked out and like, oh my gosh, we can't attack, we're the worst. We need some sort of 3-0 victory against a team that's near the relegation zone. I mean, they're 20th, they're in it. We missed an opportunity against Norwich. We missed it again against Watford. Both of those games were at home, and we had 1-0 wins. I think against Newcastle, you have to make a statement. And I kind of sit on the fence of, I think it's a little bit of system and a little bit of the individuals. Bakayo and ESR, nothing really works without them, but they don't really have their shooting boots on. And we know we have 2 aging strikers playing number 10 and number 9. So it's a little bit like, I'm not sure why we can't get the attack going, but also has something to do with the midfield. And I feel like if you bring in Odegaard and get some control, because when you play with 2, you don't have control. We don't. And with Newcastle wanting to try to get away from Bruce ball, which was essentially a 4-5-1 and sitting deep and playing on the counter, it gives us a good opportunity to exploit a team that, like you already said, is going to try to play really open, and hopefully Odegaard and whoever else can find those seams and pass into our attacking players. I think we could really hurt them, but I haven't seen us hurt a team in a while. Not Spurs is maybe the last team that I felt like we really hurt them. I thought Aston Villa was just like really, really bad. So we'll see what happens, but Arteta needs to respond to the lack of attack. Some of it is him. We can't give him credit for the defensive stability in his system and then not ding him for the attacking part of it not working. So part of it is him and his system picking the right people, and then they kind of need to do their job. So we need to see a 4-0 or 3-0 or something.
This is the key. We can't have this. We can't have the Joe Willock no celebration. That's got to not happen. Let's talk Joe Willock for a minute. Like this is an interesting one. We had this debate on the podcast that just came out today, about Joe Willock being sort of a reminder that when you have doubts about a player fitting and someone wants to buy them from you, just sell them, because odds are those doubts are for a reason. You haven't found a role for them where they're a clean fit, and you can pivot to a player that fits better. We went into the market. We bought a lot of new players. We're excited about most, if not all of them. And I don't think many of us are missing Joe Willock right now. Joe Willock has not had a good start to his season. He is, basically 10th in expected goals for Newcastle, like 11th or 12th in expected goals plus expected assists. He's like near dead last in completed passes per 90. The only thing he's really doing well for them is his tackle numbers. And I don't think that's what he was there for. But he has a new coach now, a coach that will, emphasize the attacking side of the game maybe a bit more. What's your thought on the Joe Willock sale now in retrospect, maybe being a bit of a lesson to us to take a deep breath? And it's always sad to see these academy kids go, but when the move looks good, make it. And also just generally the struggles he's been going through this season.
Yeah, I tend to be a little bit more on the harsh side, where I'm kind of like, once I don't think it's it's working, they don't fit the system, or I just don't think they're at the level, I'm like, sell, sell, sell. And as much as I love Willock, he was somebody that I felt like we needed to sell in the summer. And since Iwobi, it's like the first time that we've really done that. Like before, it's like you always say, before it's super obvious that you need to sell the player, we actually did it. And look, he's not really doing the things that people were kind of like, he's not scoring goals or really affecting Newcastle in a way that people thought that he would do for us had we shifted this around or played him with this person or whatever. I get that we don't score a lot of goals, but he wasn't scoring a lot of goals for us. So just because he went to Newcastle on loan and had this little burst of form didn't really change my mind that he just wasn't up to the standard. Now, I get why people don't want to sell the Hale End kids, because it's kind of like, what if they become the Gnabry? But Gnabry is a very, very specific example of an elite level player that we let slip through our fingers. Willock is not that. And I think
I feel like that's Scott Willis level pronunciation of Gnabry there, by the way, with the Gnabry.
Is it supposed to be Gnabry?
I think it's Gnabry. Gnabry.
Is it Gnabry?
Yeah, I think you put the R, Gnabry, not Gnarby. Like Gnabry. Hit us up in the mentions. Maybe I got it wrong. But this podcast is nothing if not branded around mispronouncing names, from the simplest names to the most complex. So
Oh,
you know, you're
100%.
100% on brand here. Yeah, I mean, this to me reads Nabry with the
Yeah,
silent
that's what
G.
but not Narberry.
Not
Nabry.
Narberry. Yeah, that we can
Yeah.
agree. I think we can all agree. It's hard to agree with anything on the internet, but I think we can finally reach. We've finally reached. He's gnarly. He's a gnarly player, that Nabry. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, yes, that you're right. We've been burned by that. But the funny thing is, Jess, most of the young players who left, who we were burned by, weren't situations where we chose to sell and got burned. They were usually situations where we reluctantly lost a player, right? Like Nabry,
Yeah.
he was injured. We couldn't get him to re-sign his contract because we'd loaned him out to Tony Pulis, which wasn't ideal. We didn't want him to go. Whereas guys like Willock or Iwobi, or maybe in the case of an Nketiah, you know, in a more currently at the club situation, there were opportunities, I think, to sell. In some cases we chose to or didn't. So look, I'd love to see all these Hale End kids thrive, even when they leave, not tomorrow, ideally, but you know, we don't want Willock to thrive tomorrow, but you're right. There's an attachment to these players, and it's understandable. But it's so funny how once you sell them, how quickly you just move on from them and realize that, like, wow, actually selling Iwobi or selling Joe Willock is a great piece of business.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, 25 million for somebody who, I mean, just wasn't fitting, you know. And I know that some people are like, well, if we play differently, as long as Arteta's the manager, he needs players that kind of play his system. And Willock didn't fit that. So yeah, in another system, in another time, maybe in a couple years, Willock is just banging in goals and he looks like this superstar. But at the moment, 25 million looks really good. And I'd like to see us do that a little bit more, because any young player that's going to actually make it at Arsenal is going to be elite. They just are. Anybody else is going to be just filling in time, like somebody like Ainsley Maitland-Niles. ESR and Saka are kind of like the example of Hale End kids that would actually make it. And then the ones kind of underneath, they're either squad players or you move them on. And I like moving them on for money. That feels good to me. So yeah, but Willock, please don't score. Please don't score.
All right, well, I'm going to kick the bear. Thomas Partey. I mean, it's suddenly an open debate, Jess, about whether or not we're getting enough from this Rolls-Royce player that we splashed the cash on. And I think some of it is injury, which, first of all, is not the player's fault per se and not the club's fault, because there was no indication that he had injury issues before he arrived. And I think much like Aaron Ramsey, who, when he would come back from injury, it would take those 4 or 5 games in the side before we really saw the best Aaron Ramsey. Thomas Partey is constantly in and out, and that's not ideal. But we bought him from a big club for a big fee, put him on top 5 midfielder wages in the entire Premier League. And the idea is be transformational for that part of the pitch that's been a struggle since Santi Cazorla left. You know, make that difference. And I hear a lot of things like, oh, well, you know, what he really needs is Saka back, or he really needs this. And with all due respect, I think when you go for a player at that fee, at that age of his career, right in the heart of his prime, with the experience he has, you're not asking him to come in and be a guy who's good if he has just the right this, that around him. You're asking for a guy who puts in 8 out of 10s pretty consistently. And while Thomas Partey, when he's on it, Rolls-Royce player, no question. We've seen some exceptional play, but is it consistent enough? I know you love the player, and I love what the player can be, but are we getting it from him consistently enough? Because I see midfield as an area that needs to improve.
Yeah, I mean, if I just answer the question, like, are we getting enough from him consistently? The answer is no. Like, that is so clear. And Thomas Partey is the player that I really wanted during that summer, you know, where there was 2 schools of thought. We need a War or we need a Thomas Partey, very split throughout the fan base. And I really wanted Thomas Partey because I feel we've just lacked the legs in midfield. He just does things that we just haven't had in a long time. The injuries have shocked me. I have to be honest. That's not something that I foresaw. Like
How
his
could you?
injury
He didn't
record
have
was
that history. He
it,
didn't have that history.
yeah. And I feel like when he has those couple of games where he's playing at the top level, you can really see the difference that he makes with us. But we're definitely not seeing it enough. And when I rewatched the Liverpool game, you know, of course, when you make him a stock down, I'm yelling at you. I'm not going to lie, but it's true. He didn't impose himself on that game, and I think he was a little sheepish in midfield and maybe he could have done a little bit more. But I think the reasons why it just depends on kind of where you sit with it. I think it could be we need more from him. We need him to impose himself more. But also, when I look at the midfield and I see him playing next to Sambi Lakanga, who's a great young prospect, but nowhere near the level that I feel like people are projecting onto him. I think he's very young. He didn't even come from one of the top 5 leagues. He was playing in the Belgium league. That is significantly lower than even like League Un, so you're playing with him in a two-man midfield. Let's get it right. It's a two-man midfield against Liverpool's three-man midfield that when it's on, it's really, really on. So I think it's a little bit of both, but midfield needs major surgery. It just does. Like, there's just no really way around it. When we play against teams that press us, we fold. We did it against Crystal Palace, Brighton, and Liverpool. Those are all teams that pressed us, and we just couldn't handle it. And so for me, I always look back to the summer when we looked at our transfer window, and I just felt a little bit always in the back of my mind that we should have got the midfielder. We should have got it. We needed somebody else that can bear the brunt of that midfield pivot if we're going to play with the number 10. And we just didn't do it. So I want Thomas obviously to impose himself, but I do give him a little bit of grace because I've seen this before with Arsenal, with several different players where we never really finished their part of the pitch and we're looking at them like, we spent all this money on you. Why are you not doing it? I personally think football is a lot about partnerships, and without the right pieces around you, you're not going to get the most. But that's not to say that he didn't really underperform against Liverpool, which is disappointing because, like you said, he's played against that level of competition. I do think he hit a little bit. So I'm willing to concede a little bit.
Yeah. The funny thing is, like, I have sympathy for all sides of this debate. Like, the funny thing I think sometimes online is that there's a perception that you have to come down strongly on one side of a debate. And like, I think Thomas Partey is an exceptionally talented player, and we've seen some elite performances from him. I also think it's fair that the expectation when he arrived was a more consistently elite level of performance. I think there's also truth that he's maybe been misused a bit. He is not, in my view, a deepest midfielder. He's not a holding DM type player. This is an interesting question. I talk about him needing to be transformational. We've seen some transformational signings. Virgil van Dijk comes to mind in Liverpool, turning them from a dynamic attacking team to an all-conquering team. But what about
Fernandes.
midfield?
That's a good example.
Yeah, but it's a question. What are some transformational midfield signings? I think you have to go back a little bit, but I think Yaya Toure was pretty transformational for Manchester City when they were trying to arrive at the elite level. I think N'Golo Kante really revitalized Chelsea's midfield. Chelsea have had a couple. Michael Essien was transformational for them at one time. N'Golo Kante has been. I don't know if at Liverpool there's been that. Thiago is a special player, but Liverpool were all conquering before Thiago got there. And, so I'm not sure he necessarily counts. Santi Cazorla was somewhat transformational for us, although he wasn't brought in to be in the midfield, and then he got injured and he wasn't around as much. And some people say, well, Santi Cazorla is a great example of how it's all about partnerships. Yep, Makelele is a great example. Was Santi Cazorla great because he had a partner like Francis Coquelin? No, I don't buy that at all. I think Francis Coquelin looked usable because Santi Cazorla was exceptional. I absolutely think that great players have a halo effect, right? And that halo effect is something that makes other players look good around them. And a great example of that is the way Arsene Wenger's teams post-Invincibles had that halo effect. Alex Hleb, what a great player. Well, how great did he look when he left? And, Alex Song didn't look very good when it works and the right players are around them. I think Cesc Fabregas made a lot of modestly talented players look exceptional around him. Robin van Persie gave Theo Walcott his best season ever at Arsenal, right? By just serving balls in that Van Persie did incredible stuff with. So, I'm not diminishing anyone's skills, but I do think that, there are players. The original transformational signing for Arsenal in some respects, although Arsenal was quite good before he arrived. Fabinho is a great shout. Absolutely. So what do you think of that idea that it's asking too much of a Thomas Partey? Because the one thing that I think Thomas Partey is misunderstood about Thomas Partey, Jess, is that like he wasn't the star at Atletico Madrid. He he wasn't always absolutely a starter. He started a lot of their big games, but he wasn't an every week starter for them. I think Saul was probably the bigger star midfield player for. So what do you think about what our expectations were and what we've gotten by comparison?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe we have misprofiled him in several different ways, not only
Fair.
positionally, but his personality on the field and who he really is. I think you have to have a certain type of personality to really transform things, and I'm not sure that Thomas has that. I think he's a very useful and high level piece of a machine that's already kind of working. In
Mm-hmm.
Simeone's team, it's not really it's not in at that time it wasn't even a star-studded team. It was everybody does their job and they do it as good as they possibly can. Similar, like not really similar to a Liverpool, but somewhat of the way that their midfield works. I don't really think that Arsenal have ever had a midfield like that. We've always had kind of one guy doing everything and then two other guys that just look good because they're standing next to him. And so I don't really think Thomas Partey is that guy. But what I will say is that there were times last season, especially, where I do think he had a little bit of that halo effect on even somebody like a Mo El-Neni. When we played against Manchester United and we beat them, that was mostly because Thomas Partey was amazing and El-Neni had the benefit of that. So I think he can do that to a certain extent. But that next midfield signing, I feel like is going to be the one that people are looking for that transformational thing from. Thomas, to me, has not shown that type of personality. Bruno Fernandes has it. Cesc had it. Yaya Toure had it. I personally think Thomas is a very good piece of a machine that's already working quite well. And having him be that first piece has kind of left us a little bit, leaving like we wanted a little bit more, but I think we need to be a little bit more patient. But yeah, that's just kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think I definitely fall on the side of being confused in terms of landing on a conclusion, because I think styles make teams and partnerships make teams, and especially in midfield, we look at Lucas Torreira and like, I'm not saying Lucas Torreira would ever have been great for us, but my goodness, the way Emery wanted to use him as like a 10 broke him in my view, right? It's just a bad fit. We've seen N'Golo Kante look bad at Chelsea at times when he was used in really weird ways and then come in and be incredible. So it is partly about finding the right way to use a player. And I think we're still sort of, is that me? Was that me listening to me?
That was me.
Okay, good. Okay, good. I still think that there's room for him to be exceptional for us. But I think maybe it's Xhaka coming back and it all clicks, or maybe it's another addition. Maybe it's getting someone who can be more of a cleaner behind him. I don't really know. And maybe it is just as simple as he stays fit, he gets a run of games, and we see a more elite level from him consistently because
Yeah.
he's not always coming back from injury. He looked unfit at Anfield to me. So,
Yeah, and I tend to think that but here again is like I could easily see the club going for a better version of Granite. I've never really got an indication that I felt like they would go for the more cleaner up sweeper person. And once you do that, it pretty much says to me that we're not prioritizing Thomas Partey. And I think about what you always talk about is that age cliff. Thomas is getting a lot of injuries. He's already 29 years old. He probably only has 2 more years for us where he'll be able to play at that top level. If we don't give him a midfielder, get him a midfielder next to him that really suits him, I feel like we'll look back on this signing and be like, did we get the most out of it? So I have a little bit of anxiety around it, depending on what that midfield profile looks like. If you bring in an Awar in the summer, you have not prioritized Thomas Partey. You might as well just sit him down, So it'll be interesting to see what the club does, but it's hard to land on a conclusion because it's a little bit of everything. You can't let Thomas escape it and say, you've been playing great, you just don't have your partner. He has not been playing great.
yeah. And
So it's a little bit of everything.
I want to address what Matthew's saying here, because I want to be clear about something, right, Matthew? Like, I think that it is absolutely unfair to sign a Thomas Partey and then say, just go fix us, even though we're this, we've got a new coach and we've got players that don't want to be there and some that are leaving and coming in. And now we've got kids, and please just fix us. I do think it is fair when you make someone your statement signing at 50 million, put them on top 5 midfield wages and drop them into the team in the heart of their prime to say, just give us 8 out of 10s more than 6 out of 10. So you got to be balanced here. I'm not saying he should have fixed everything. I'm saying I think his level can be consistently a little higher. We know he has the talent to do it. And when he was first here, one of the things I loved, Jess, first touch out of his feet and forward, either around the man or his passes are hit different. You know what I mean? They don't roll to their target. They get their pass consideration, right, to the right foot, in the right space, with the right tempo, so the player doesn't have to come back to it. And I just think the sharpness in his passing and the progressiveness in his play has maybe not quite been there. Not saying it can't be, but what I want to do is this. I call this section transfer speculation because clicks. Because hashtag clicks. Jess, it's November 26th, which is basically January. I mean, depending on what calendar you look at, it already is January. And look, here's the way I think about this, Jess, right? In August, the Halloween decorations go up in the stores. In October, after Halloween, well, I guess that's technically November, the Christmas decorations go up in the store. So now we're past Thanksgiving. So the transfer decorations are going up in our store. If we are in touching distance of top 4 in January, and there's no reason we shouldn't be, and it's totally up for grabs now, as you might have heard on a famous commentary once, the teams we are competing with for 4th place, none of them should be able to say we are clearly better than you. We should be in the hunt with all of them. I don't know that we thought the window for top 4 was open this season. Most of us going into the season said, let's get top 6 back into Europa and then onward and upward. But with United being a mess and maybe needing time, and I know I misspoke earlier, maybe Rangnick will be in charge by the time we get to them next week. But setting that aside, I think if you've got the chance to get Champions League this season, you shortcut your plan by a couple of years. You add a lot of money, and in a summer when we're probably going to need a striker, offering them Champions League football is a huge edge. So in my view, if January rolls around and you got the AFCON and players are out and you're looking and you're saying, this is an opening for us, maybe you pull a summer transfer ahead a window. Maybe you go that step further than you would have in a January because you think you can hit a target that you might have thought was a season away. So do you agree with me that given the circumstances and an unexpected window for top 4, we should be more aggressive in January? And if you agree, which I presume you will, what is that move? What is the move we do in January that could be the thing we need to do to make top 4 possible?
It's a tough one because, I do share the same. If there was an opportunity to get top 4 in January, you need to make whatever move so that you can get to it. And I believe that Arsenal should be shooting for top 4. And it's kind of like that little saying, I'm going to mess it up, but it's like you shoot a little bit higher and then you'll fall a little bit lower and then it's fine. Shoot for top 4, maybe you get 5th and you're fine, so that's kind of where I sit on that. I do think we need to bring in something in January. If we went through the January transfer window and didn't bring in anybody, that would just be so, to me, negligent, knowing that the midfield that we have with just an injury, 1 injury here, 2 injury here, like we are just decimated. I look at our midfield options, and although they can perform okay against Watford, we're not controlling games. I cannot believe the level of possession that Arsenal has in games. That, to me, that just says we can't control it with the midfield. So for me, it is central midfield, which was the issue last summer. We didn't do it. It's going to be the issue this January. We have to do it. And if we don't do it in January, then it has to get done in the summer, but it may be too late. So the issue with the January transfer window is who's available, who's going to allow a really good player to leave. Does it have to be a really good player? Can it be somebody like, I don't know, Dennis Zachariah? Could it be somebody like that? Will Borussia Mönchengladbach listen to us? It's definitely not a Ramsey or an Ox or a Wilshere. It's definitely not none of them.
We're getting the band back together. We're going in the way back machine.
But I mean, there's a lot of Arsenal fans that I feel like would at least be interested in a Ramsey. I know that for sure, but it depends on what's available. But this is where Edu's job comes into play. This is his job, is to figure out how to improve our midfield when the options are not necessarily on our side, but make sure that we stay competitive enough to stay in and around that top 4. This is his job. There are options. He just has to get it done. So So there's some names in the chat box. Kessier, you could look at him. Zachariah, he fits. I mean, he would be a free, but you may be able to get him for like almost cheap. I know that they're looking at Eddie and Ketia. Maybe there's something you can do there. Renato Sanchez, you guys, I implore you to look at his injury record. He is a walking sick note.
The crap out of me.
There's no way. And then there's Awar, who I tend to look at as probably the person that I would go after. Leon, I don't know if you guys have been watching them play. They have so many midfielders, and we need to take one of them off of their hands. I mean, he would be the perfect option, in my opinion. But that's up to Edu to get done. But if you go through the January transfer window and don't bring in a center midfielder, I don't want to hear anything about top four because you're not going to make it.
Well, this is the trouble, right? First of all, we're in line, Jess, for a world-class, old school, been a while, like a new signing. Lands, Granit Xhaka. I mean, coming back probably late December, just in time for everyone at Arsenal to think midfield's not a problem anymore. But then Thomas Partey goes to AFCON, so it is a problem. And I think Maitland-Niles has been, Maitland-Niles has been, I think, really impressive this season in midfield in a way that I didn't necessarily think he could. But it is an area that I think we could strengthen. And this is the issue, right? We sort of nailed our colors to the mast in the summer by deciding not to go for a midfielder and give Xhaka that new deal. And I know we knew AFCON was coming, right? It's not like anybody's going to wake up and be like, oh my God, where'd our players go? So I wonder, Jess, if you think that decision tells us that we already had decided internally. We kept Maitland-Niles. We re-signed Xhaka. That said, hey, that's our decision. We're going to stick with that. I do tend to agree with you that if there was a midfielder we liked, and maybe we thought we're going to keep Xhaka one more season and move him next summer, and we'll do the midfielder next summer. If that guy can be brought forward to this January in a situation where we're staring top four in the face and it's a possibility, we need to do it. But the huge debate is, of course, striker. Balogun's not ready. Martinelli is still only a notional striker. Lacazette will leave in the summer. And Aubameyang, I still like him. I still think he's good. He's not the complete player that we want in that position. It is the hardest position to solve and the most expensive one. But we did buy a striker in January once. His name is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. So it can be done. And ironically, we bought him when we had just bought Lacazette. So we've shown in the past a willingness. Now, that was probably not tactically, strategically the right move. But what do you think in terms of striker? Is January even remotely a possibility? And if it is it the kind of move you have to make? Because I think we all agree on midfield, and maybe there are things you can do there, even loans. Striker is a much more expensive and long-term consideration, I think.
Yeah, this is why I said midfield, because I'm looking at the striker thing, and of course, I would love to see Arsenal be the type of club that said, whether Lacazette is here or not, we're willing to bring in that striker because we need it. We do a lot of this where we have this already, so maybe we're not going to make that bold move. I tend to be a little bit I feel like a big club would go ahead and do it and make sure that we're not sitting there with Lacazette playing the number 10 role, trying to figure out how we're going to make him work. But the striker situation, I was I have a friend on Twitter named Adam Vogue, and he put together the list of things that the striker needs to have. That list is
great
long.
Great follow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Adam is great. And he made such a good point that he has to be of a certain age, be a proven goal scorer, have pace, the technical quality, to be able to drop in deep, but also have pace. There are so many different things, and that this particular signing is going to cost at least 50 million or more. There is no under the radar signing for this guy. And I feel like once you look at all the criteria, that group literally becomes Haaland. It literally becomes Haaland, and that we're not getting him. So I think striker is...
There are some people that think we could get him. Do you have a word for people that think Erling Haaland would come to Arsenal? Because
you guys, he's not coming.
You just got to protect yourself. My God, what are you doing?
Yeah, there's other signings that I feel like we could dream a little bit, but Haaland is not one. But that just shows how specific the signing will be, how expensive it's going to be, and how little options there actually are. So I tend to think that we'll just kind of try to make it with what we have. Now, that being said, this is why I feel like midfield could help unlock the striker position a little bit more, because I personally feel like our midfield is a big reason why we don't score enough goals. It's a big reason why you have to have Lacazette in the team. It's the reason why you can't get Odegaard on the pitch as well. If you could bring in a midfielder, I think that would help significantly. Maybe not enough to change our minds about striker altogether, but I think it's the most transformative we could get and the most attainable we could get, because the striker, it has to be right, and I don't think you're going to get it right in January. Nobody's going to let that guy go. We're going to have so many conversations over the summer about who this striker is. We don't even know what Arteta really wants. Can anybody say definitively that they know what kind of striker Mikel Arteta wants?
Yeah,
we could just guess, so
I think we know it's probably not Oba or Lacazette. It's something different. By the way, thank you, Emmanuel. That is incredibly kind.
And it's probably about 6
hugely
years
appreciated.
younger.
Yeah. So thank you for that. The Tammy Abraham thing is interesting. Hasn't really happened for him in his move. He started hot and it's just been okay. We need the Ramsdale of strikers. Yeah, someone that we buy that everybody hates and doesn't want, and then turns out to be absolutely sensational. I would go for that. The interesting thing is, actually, if you look around at the strikers at big clubs, I mean, City need a striker, don't have one, seem to be fine. Liverpool, I mean, their strikers are excellent, but it's really their wide players that score. Chelsea obviously have two that you can take. And there are a lot of ways that you can get goals. But so let me ask you this, as we sort of start to shift to predictions for tomorrow. I love Emil Smith-Rowe and Bukayo Saka. I think they're two of the brightest young prospects in all of football, and especially in the Premier League. But they're playing every game for Arsenal right now, and they are in positions that we need to get goals from and we need to get assists from. And granted, Smith-Rowe has kicked in with some, no discredit there, but what's your feeling on the output that is fair to expect from 20 and 21-year-old players vis-a-vis what Arsenal need? Our attack is an issue. We are nearly dead last in big chances created and goals from open play, 19th. We are using kids, really talented kids, but kids in two attacking positions on a team that is struggling to get output. And I'm wondering how you balance this, because you don't want to do anything to stand in the way of development of those two players. They are the linchpin to our future success. But by the same token, end product usually comes a little later in careers. And so I think that balance is tricky. And I'm curious what you think of wanting to give Saka and Smith-Rowe the room and the license to go become stars, but also realizing that it may mean we are a bit short of end product until that adds to their game. I don't know how you balance that. And maybe that's partly why he got Lacazette in there for Odegaard, because his attitude is maybe Lacazette can do a little of both, connect, play, but get in the box. We have guys like Martinelli and Pepe who may be more end product oriented. This to me is the really tricky thing about managing Arsenal, wanting to bring through the young players who are inextricably linked to your future success, while also recognizing that means they may not have the full range of tools in their toolkit yet.
Yeah, I mean, this summer, I think, and I know I got whacked for it, but I said we're going to struggle to score goals. ESR and Saka are players that personally I feel like we're projecting what we feel like they will become on them now, and they're just not those players yet. And I also controversially will say that I'm not sure that I believe both of them are natural goal scorers. I don't. I'm not going to say which one I don't think is, but I feel like I'm not seeing a goal scorer in that player. And that's definitely why we're going to need a striker that can score goals. Can't be a false nine, because neither of our wide men, if we continue on with these two, are going to have Salah Mane type of numbers. Now, of course, this is where not having additional games in Europe makes things really complicated, because we don't have the ability to let them develop and also give them time to sit. I personally feel like we need at least one more experienced goal scoring wide man, and then you play one of the other so that we can get the goals, but also give the players time. I think we overemphasize that they need to play or else they're going to leave or they're going to do this. Foden, I think, benefited the most from playing in and around better players than him, but also sitting. And Saka and ESR are not getting that. They're not playing. They're the best players on the team, and they're not sitting. They're not really getting that good development that I feel like they would need, and they're only going to get that in at England at the moment.
Yeah.
So we're struggling. But in the short term, if we don't and get another attacker in that's more experienced, that has already the goals going, what I feel like Arteta needs to do that I'm not seeing him do enough is balance the attack with two two creators and two goal scorers. What he does is he has 3 10s and Aubameyang, and it's just not good enough. This is where bringing in a Pepe or Martinelli and playing one of ESR and Saka makes a lot more sense. But he's going for the two players that are great in build up, that are the ones that are going to be a little bit more maybe reliable on the ball, but they don't have the goal scoring nows that Martinelli and Pepe do. He needs to get the balance right. This is why I'm kind of wanting him to push for Martinelli to play on that left-hand side a little bit more. You could still play ESR in the 10 if you feel like it, or take Saka off and play Pepe sometimes. He's not rotating enough, so we're not getting that balance. So in the short term, he could do that. In the long term, if we, even in January, if they brought in an attacker instead of a striker, that's another option that they could do to take some of that burden off of ESR and Saka and bring goals in. But it needs to be addressed because the two of them are not really, I don't know if it's going to click as fast as people think it is. Like, I could easily see them both getting maybe 5-ish goals maybe this season.
It's interesting to me because when a part of your game isn't working, what we do is we go into the lab and we try to come up with exotic solutions, right? And when you're coming up with exotic solutions, I think that's indicative of the fact that the structure of the squad still isn't quite right. So when you find yourself saying things like Pepe could play the false 9 role, or he should play as the striker because, he can do this, or like maybe we can put Smith Rowe as like, I think it's just indicative of the fact that we have a squad that's still a bit of a work in progress surgically. Like, we have two aging strikers of different profiles who neither of which we probably want to go forward with. We're using a guy in Smith Rowe who maybe is more of an interior player as a winger. We've got a winger in Partey who's not in Pepe, who's not great with chalk on his boots, but we don't really have a way to get him in the interior. And in Saka, we have a wide player who's just 20, so the end product might not quite be there yet. On his side, we don't have an overlapping right back, right, in Tomiyasu as much. So that's going to mean that the right side naturally struggles a little bit, I think, to be as devastating because you have to do more one-on-one and isolations. Who's playing the 10? Is it Lacazette playing the false 9? Is it Odegaard pulling the strings? One has goals, one has end product, in creativity. So the whole thing feels like a little bit like Frankenstein's monster still, and that's going to take time to unwind and get right. We'll see what happens with it, Jess, but I think when we get to this stage with players, the Pepe should play. He'll be great if we just use him here. That's usually like the last stage before we arrive at we just need to move him on, right? Because it starts out, you get the player, you're super excited, and you're like, he's going to be amazing. And then he's not quite amazing. So then we get to the part where we're like, well, he'd be amazing if we just used him here. And then we get to the part where we're like, well, maybe he's just not consistently going to be good enough at all. Pepe is a talented footballer, but there are flaws in his game from a decision-making standpoint. He's not super clean. He doesn't deliver the ball on time in every situation. He is a frustrating player because on his left foot, he can do some absolutely amazing things. But you know who else could do that? Lucas Podolski. But Lucas Podolski was just not a good. And I remember with Podolski, people used to be like, if we just use him this way, that traction engine of a left foot, my God, what we could do with him. But like, the truth is, he just didn't have a complete game in enough of a way to be effective. And so, I think that was a problem. Do you think, by the way, for Black Friday, we can get 50% off on Haaland? It's a good thought.
Well, then everybody can get 50% off on Haaland.
Well, don't tell them. They have to use a promo code they can't find. So let's get to prediction time, though. So before we get out of here, everybody throw your predictions in the chat, and we'll get them up there. Jess, give me your not just score prediction, but a quick thought on how the game goes and what the outcome will be.
Yeah, I think we'll see a return of Kieran Tierney. I think you'll see Thomas Partey and Sambi play again. I think Odegaard comes into the team, and I also think Martinelli comes into the team. Whether or not that's at left wing or striker, I don't know, but I think that's what we'll see. I think we will look nervous. I have a feeling that the team may need to shake off that Liverpool loss at first, get their feet right. But I see us winning this game quite easily. I could see maybe not a 10-0 to the Arsenal, but
It's
something
always the right prediction.
maybe a 2-0 or a 3-0. I'm hoping for a 3-0, but I think this time Aubameyang's not going to be playing against us. If he is playing, he will stay out of our way and let goals go in. If we get a penalty, he'll score them. Like, I think we'll get goals in this game, but I don't see, with the defense that we have, us giving up a goal against Newcastle. One thing that has not changed in my mind is that back line is secure when we play against these lower level oppositions. So I'm going to go a little bit more conservative. I'll say 2-0 to the Arsenal, but we will be dominant, have a lot of possession, and have a lot of joy.
Can I ask you a question just before I give my prediction?
Yeah.
My biggest frustration with Arsenal right now, maybe even bigger than the attack, just not generally being as potent as I'd like, is this mind-numbing thing we do where if we get a lead and we get ourselves in a good position, we drop into a shell. Now, look, I get it. You get a lead, you want to play on the counterattack more. That's sort of normal game state stuff. But we've seen situations, Jess, like the Leicester game, where it's not that we play on the counter more. We just turtle, right? Like we go into a shell, the two banks of four compress on the edge of our area. Lacazette and Aubameyang get sucked way back towards their end. And we rewatched the Liverpool game, Clive and I, on the Patreon side of things. And like, you see it when Lacazette and Aubameyang get sucked back in, there's no exit. And so when we win the ball back, there's no counterattack. And so for you is one of the really big things here, not just take the lead against a bad Newcastle, but take the lead and then continue to carry a threat and not cede the initiative and the impetus of the game entirely over to the visiting team.
Sure. Yeah. I do think that that's something that needs to improve. And I think that that still comes with the lack of control in midfield. When I watch Manchester City play, I can't help but feel like Arteta's trying to do some Walmart version of that, low key. Like, I just feel like they score the 2 goals kind of early, then they take the foot off the gas. But what they do is they kind of sit in a shape, take the ball, and then possess it again, and possess you to sleep. We do the sit off, we win the ball, and then we give it up. We don't have that calmness that we should have. I don't mind us taking the foot off of the gas, because I understand that, like, we want to conserve energy. We don't really need to be pressing once we're like 2-0 up, but we miss that part of keeping the ball, because when you keep giving it back to them, then they're coming on you. So it's something that we need to figure out. But I think that comes with more control in midfield. And unfortunately, because Sambi and Thomas have not been great in possession as of late, and we're playing with Lacazette a little bit, our outlets are not great, and they haven't been for a while. It's difficult for us, but it is frustrating, because you just feel like, why can't we just keep going? Why can't we just keep slapping them up? But we always have to remember that a team will try to come back on us. And if we could just get the ball and even maybe take advantage of some of the counterattacks that we have, we wouldn't be having these feelings, because we even have opportunities for counterattacks that we just mess up. So
Yeah.
I think that'll come with more experience and more control in midfield. And I don't think that comes until that next signing comes in.
That weird period of games where we can't string 3 passes together. Like, I get why we want to criticize Arteta, and he deserves some criticism, but like, he's not there telling them like, misplace 2 simple passes, then boot it long. He's not there saying, you can even see him remonstrating them to expand, to put, stretch the accordion, get back up the pitch a bit. I think I'll leave it with this. I think my prediction is, I think we'll play really well. I think we got somewhat unlucky against Liverpool in the sense that 2 young players in Tavares and Sambi really sort of lost their nerve, made some mistakes in the second half that made that game feel uncompetitive after a first half that I think a lot of people were feeling good about. And so I think we will play well. I think my prediction is there'll be a surprise in the starting 11, maybe someone we didn't expect to come back in. I do think Tierney comes back in, but maybe there'll be a surprise. I think we'll play well. I think Newcastle's attack is bad. I think we'll play well. They will score. We will score a lot. We'll create chances. But I will say this. I wasn't as frustrated after the Liverpool loss, because you know what? They're in a different tier right now. We should be competing for top 4 the way the league is currently configured. If we can't play maybe the worst team in the league, or one of them anyway, at home, in a confident way where we create chances and looks dominant, a lot of the questions start to come back. And we don't want to be doing this judge the manager on a game by game basis. There's no long range outcome there that makes any sense. But this is one of the games you point to, like Norwich at home was, and you say, if you can't impress me here, when can you? So hopefully we will see something impressive, especially with a trip to Old Trafford, where we will really want to get something from that game, even with the managerial change. So my prediction is 4-1 to the Arsenal. As you know, I'm always positive at kickoff time and maybe a little less so at full time, but that's what I'm predicting. We certainly love you for being here. We will have an instant reaction pod for patrons right an hour after full time tomorrow. We'll have the full post-match pod on Monday and more of these live streams, several of them hosted by Jess because she is more talented at this and we'll be doing a lot of fun stuff here. But Jess, for the time being, it is my chance to say goodbye and say thank you. So Jess is on Twitter at It's Jessinho. And as always, a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
We'll talk to you soon. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. We love you. We hope you enjoy the game tomorrow and, enjoy a big victory that we can all celebrate and get us feeling good about the trip to Old Trafford on Monday. So we love you and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Newcastle 0.